Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. So, which position group has the advantage going into the spring? Now, last year was kind of a no-brainer. The defensive line, due to the acquisitions of Akeem Mesidor headlining that particular group, bringing in, Najee Kelly, along with the rest of the guys that were already at that particular position group. But this year, we got busy. Matthew Lee, Cohen, big-time additions. Obviously, of course, we got the two bookend freshman tackles, and they'll get integrated in this particular system, at their, in time, right? In time. Don't need to rush those two guys on the field unless the situation calls for them to get there. Big advantage that both guys are early enrollees, so they will be here for spring. They will be here. And just my recent memory, and at the time, we didn't necessarily know it, at least from an offensive line standpoint. From a defensive line standpoint, we did know it. But from an offensive line standpoint, I think the last time that we've been in a situation where we had a solid to pretty good offensive line going against a good defensive line was back in 2016, Mark Richt's first year. Obviously, Manny Diaz came in, revamped the entire defense, went to a 4-3 more downhill attacking style, and the offensive line did fairly well. Obviously, headlined by Trevor Darling and Casey McDermott. So I think that particular unit was pretty good for a pretty good test for the defensive line that we had returning. But this year, man, we might have to go back to when I say early 2000, I'm not talking about 01, 2, 3. I'm talking about maybe more like 05, maybe 06, somewhere in that time frame, to kind of, when we look at the talent that's along both of these particular lines. And I think, and I don't buy this thing, right? I don't buy this saying. I've heard people say this before, where it's like, let's just say, let's talk about it from this vantage point. The defensive linemen are better than the offensive linemen. And so somebody will say, well, the offensive lineman is going against a good defensive lineman every day in practice. He has no choice but to get better. Not necessarily. Because the defensive lineman can continue to get better, and the offensive lineman may never get close enough to close the gap to make the reps that they have in practice actually have any significance. So I never bought that. That's not iron sharpening iron. And the reason it's not is because going back to 2016 as well as 2017, when the offensive line was solid, and the defensive line was good, we saw in games where teams had equal offensive lines to our defensive line, our guys didn't really get the movement that we needed. Obviously, Clemson comes to mind. Obviously, the bowl game against Wisconsin. Those two games come to mind. I go back to Boston College when Anthony Brown was there, when Dylan was running the ball. That particular game comes to mind where there were offensive lines that were good, better than what they were practicing with, and our guys got exposed. And so that's the reverse effect of that. If I'm going against someone that's inferior to me every day and you can't give me any work, well, if I'm beating you and I'm not putting my all forward, when it comes time for me to really buckle down and get to it, and I can't, I got to go back to say, hey, look, I'm not getting a good look in practice, coach. And by the time I get to the game, I don't know. Because defensive line, to me, is a little bit different than, let's say, a wide receiver and a quarterback going out on the field and the jugs machines out there. They're working on timing and routes. I can go through the bags all day, but I need some resistance. I need somebody in front of me blocking me, or I need somebody in front of me trying to defeat my block. And a lot of times, we don't necessarily hear that. At least I don't. I don't necessarily hear. Anytime I hear about people saying, well, the guys are working extra, it's always usually talking about skill position guys. Oh, they're working to catch the ball, or they're working to do this, or they're working to field punts, or this, that. Don't necessarily hear situations where we got offensive linemen and defensive linemen out there getting it in one-on-ones, right? Working on those particular things like that. So I'm ready for these matchups. I need to see Matthew Lee and LT. I need to see LT work against a guy who's not going to make it easy for him. A guy in Cohen who is going against SEC linemen, has played up against a Georgia defense that has Jalen Carter, as well as the big guy that they had, the other big defensive tackle that they had. He's going against that talent. And by many draft experts, Jalen Carter could be the #1 player off the board, just depending on what a team needs. But he's going to be a top 5 pick. He's going against that. He knows what that looks like. And so we know LT has that monster first step. But what you going to do after that first step? Cohen going to make you figure out what you're going to do after the first step. Matthew Lee is going to make you figure out what you're going to do after that first step. So obviously, Samson versus Nigelique. Cannot wait for this. Samson and Ruben Bain, Francis and Ruben Bain. And the forgotten guy. I did something that I don't do today. I had some time today, right? I did something I don't do. Man, I went back and I looked at some high school highlights of some guys on our team. Because, and I'm guilty of this as well, if a guy has not developed by his sophomore year, we kind of throw the towel in on him. And you know whose tape I went to go look back at? Chance Williams. And I said, man, where is this player? Where is this young man that I'm looking at on tape? His tape looks just as good as Malik Bryant's. Looks just as good as, I'm not going to say it look as good as Ruben Bain. Looks better than Jaden Wayne's tape. Where's that young man? Are we going to get that young man this year? I went to look at Jafari Harvey tape. And I even found some footage of Jafari Harvey because when I was on Coach Hayes' show a few weeks back, and they were talking about why Jafari Harvey back in coverage. And I found some film from an all-star camp where they had Jafari Harvey actually covering running backs out of the backfield. I was like, oh, so there is kind of something there. So Kevin Steele is not actually just doing something that the man has not got a look, hasn't gotten a look at before. But again, looking at his tape, beautiful. Where they at? Where they at? Now again, I can go to two things. I can say it's coaching, and player maybe not accepting the coaching or doing the things that they need to do, right? That kind of ties hand in hand. Or it goes back to one of the things I said at the beginning of this video. You're going against inferior talent every day in practice. And by the time the game comes and a guy who's a little bit more, who's better, and don't take much, but guys that are better that we're playing against, because again, we get too caught up in this talent thing. Because once, and this is one thing that I will always say, I commend Manny Diaz for saying, once you hit Green Tree, it don't matter how many stars you had. That is over with. You gotta reprove yourself all over again. And so I think that's what's happened. Where we've had some guys, and I go to bat for this because guys say we haven't invested in the trenches like we needed to. Yes, we have. It just the investment just never paid off. Whether it was from scheme wise, whether it was from coaching wise, or just from the fact that offensive linemen just take more time to develop, right? It just take more time to develop. When we look at a lot of these playoff teams and stuff like this, if you look at the offensive line, they may have a freshman or a redshirt freshman on the offensive line, but you're really looking more at guys who are redshirt sophomores, guys who are redshirt juniors, guys who are seniors, maybe even some guys who are redshirt seniors. That's just the amount of time that these guys need to be on campus to actually work together in jail. So I'm not saying Chance Williams and Jafari Harvey turned back into what we thought we were getting when they came out of high school, but they about to get some looks. they about to get some looks. And again, I said this on another video, seeing is that a lot of guys played this particular year. Coach Mirabel as well as Coach Mario have film on guys now, since they said they didn't watch film coming in. You watch the film now. They know what the guys need to work on to get better. And so, again, in conclusion, I feel like the offensive line does have the advantage due to Matthew Lee and Cohen, and then the guys that we have coming back. But I would not be surprised if a Jafari Harvey and a Chance Williams step up. Because I know a lot of people are penciling in Najee Kelly to start. Hey, he just might. Because he showed flashes. But we've seen this before. We've seen the flashes. But is it going to turn into a flashlight? Because some flashlights have those functions on it where you can hit it and it flickers. That's a flash. But is it going to be a headlight where I push the button and it's consistently on? Is that what's going to happen? LT, you about to get some work for the first time in your 3-year tenure at the University of Miami. You about to get some work. I'm excited. I usually don't watch these one-on-one videos in the spring, but I'm watching them. I don't care what's going on the outside. As long as I hear my boy Jacoby George is doing his 1-2 thing, I'm straight. But I need to see this. I'm excited. I promise you. I am excited about this, man. Finally, we're about to have a spring where the offensive line and defensive line can actually get at it, and we're actually going to have iron sharpening iron for the first time since the mid to early 2000s. I'm ready. But as always, man, let me know what y'all guys think in the comments, man. Do you think the defensive line has the advantage going into spring, or do you think the offensive line has an advantage? And do you think any guy that we may have forgotten about could actually have the light bulb pop on and actually have a tremendous spring that rolls over into summer and pays huge dividends in the fall? But as always, man, it's always about the you. Like, share, subscribe, and I'm out.